Bonjour. Hello and a warm welcome to So French, le podcast from Paris about France. It's crazy politics and life à la française.
My name is Stefan Vries.
And my name is Sara Bertilsson.
And this week we have a special So French edition where we go deep into one single topic, France and the war in Ukraine.
Well, Ukraine has been top of news both in France and in Europe these past weeks. About 2 weeks ago, two major developments landed almost at the same time. First, out of nowhere came Donald Trump's unexpected 28-point peace plan. And at the same time, France and Ukraine announced a new arms agreement. And President Zelensky and President Macron signed this letter of intent that would allow Ukraine then to buy French defense equipment over this coming decade.
Yeah, and the headline is, this deal was Ukraine's plan to buy up to 100 Rafale fighter jets. That will be the largest order ever for French aircraft, and it includes advanced air-to-air missiles and other equipment. It's a huge deal by any standard. So the key question now is, what does this mean for France's role and strategy in the war in Ukraine?
And so with us to talk more about this is Dr. Eli Tenenbaum. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Stefan, for having me. It's great to be here.
Good. You're the director of Vries Security Studies Center, Vries being the French Institute for International Relations. It's great having you with us. And you're a specialist in European security and defense policy. So the perfect person for us to talk to you about this.
I try to be.
Could you just start by giving us a brief introduction to your research?
Okay, so Vries is a non-partisan think tank. It's the main think tank in France on international relations and security. So I run a team of 8, which is producing research and reports and organizing events around defense and security. We have obviously close connections with the Ministry of Defense and Armed Forces, but I do intend to say that we are independent. We mostly private funded, actually, and very, very diversified funding, and we try to produce recommendations and policy relevant policy oriented research on anything security and defense. So we do obviously cover all the issues that you just mentioned, whether it's defense industry, French policy vis-a-vis Ukraine, the trajectory of the military operations, whether they are in the battlefront in Ukraine right now or elsewhere in the world, and also the pace of military technology. So this is a bit what you do. Most of what we produce is freely available online on Vries' website. We do try now to translate as much as we can into English, or sometimes to write straight into English. We just published a big report called Europe-Russia Balance of Power Review, which is online, and try to make a net assessment of multi-dimensional balance of power between Europe and Russia. And so I hope that some of the listeners may find further info on the website, also in English.
Okay. If we start with this Rafale order, is it really existing? And if it does, how big is it really?
That is the question. Very, very good question, Stefan. I think that so first let's look at what we have and what was officially announced. What was announced was a letter of intention. For those who listen who may not be familiar with defense contracts and weapons contract, letter of intention or LOI is the very, very first step of an arms deal. This is not a firm order at all. This is basically two parties saying, hey, we are interested in buying and we're interested in selling. So this was announced with the number of 100 Rafales, but from there many questions arise. One of them obviously is who has the money, who would actually buy, who, if you're looking at Rafale, is high-end combat aircraft, about 75 million a piece. If you include the equipment and the ammunition, it very easy to get to 100 million a unit. So 100 Rafales is 10 billion years deal. France right now doesn't have that kind of money on its end, and Ukraine certainly doesn't either. And then you add to that the question about the production, which is that Dassault, which is the industrialist which produces the Rafale, currently has this line of production fully booked until 2030. Rafale has been exporting pretty well outside France. France itself is buying some Rafale because we're trying to replace our old and aging Mirage, some of them having been given to Ukraine, by the way. And so we're trying to move by 2030 to full 100% Rafale Air Force. Now we have about 100 Rafale in the French Air Force and 100 Mirage, which are to be replaced by brand new Rafales. And then to add to that, you have India, you have the United Arab Emirates, you have Greece, Serbia, Croatia, which are buying Rafale. Indonesia has placed also some sort of an order on the Rafale, but also it's more an MOU, which is kind of in between LOI and firm order. So you have a pretty packed queue here, and Dassault's first kind of communication was that they will not be organization of the line of people, should get what first. So that is also.
But still, even if they would reorganize, that means that what are we talking here? Years? 5, 6,
we
7,
probably
10?
talking years. I mean, it all depends. If you put like all priority on Ukraine, Dassault is able to produce 3 to 5 Rafale a month. So you could have, if you're really saying like everything that comes out of Dassault's manufacturing goes to Ukraine, you could start to have something sooner than later. But then you're gonna have a lot of angry customers saying, "Hey, why don't I get the Rafales I paid for?" So it is an issue. You also can say, okay, with 100 Rafale, this is enough to justify opening a new line of production, hiring new people, basically building a new factory just for Ukraine. You could also say that, but to go in that direction, you need money, and you need money now, and we haven't seen the first cent of this money so far.
Yeah, so Ukraine in reality will have to be patient, very patient.
Well, probably, to be honest. Then you also have the question: have you trained pilots? A Rafale pilot. You ask some people in the French Air Force, they say it takes 10 years to train a pilot. Now, Ukraine has already some pilots who are already trained on other on other aircraft. So you can of course go and squeeze into maybe much less time, and you do not necessarily need like the full certifications of everything, but it still will take take a couple of years to have those Rafale pilots fully trained from not even from scratch, but from basic pilot training. So it's also have the question of the equipments. Dassault is mostly assembling some pieces to make the Rafale, but there are some tensions on the radars. For instance, Thales is making the radars which are in the nose of the plane, and there has been a lot of tensions on how those radars. So it's a very complex question, but yes, bottom line is I don't see those Rafales flying into the Ukrainian skies anytime soon. Certainly not in the first quarter or even semester of 2026.
Okay. Now let's have a look at the support for Ukraine in Europe. If you look at the ranking of the Kiel Institute, that's the institute that follows all the money and support that's going to Ukraine, then we see Denmark at the first spot with 2.93% of GDP. And then many countries follow. And then at the 21st place, France with only 0.29% of GDP. So that's only a tenth of what the Danes do. Nordic countries and the Baltic countries, they are on top. Why is France lagging so behind on the rest of Europe when it comes to support for Ukraine?
Okay, so first, France comes a long way in the story of its support to Ukraine, both political support, military support. You have to remember that for a long time, after 2014 and the first illegal annexation of Crimea by Russia, France kind of put itself, along with Germany, in the situation of a mediator between Ukraine and Russia, and not as a supporter of Ukraine, even if it was, some would say, a biased mediator that was slightly pro-Ukraine. So it was not producing actual military aid, assistance, or anything to Ukraine. That remained true until the first month of 2022, the first 2 months. You all remember Emmanuel Macron going to Russia, trying to, arrange for the war not to happen, and being very committed to that. Even in the first half of 2022, France was, even though putting sanctions on Russia and being kind of vocal to the support of Ukraine, still trying and open to play this mediation role, that it finally had to accept that we had to pick a to pick a side, or and choose its side, and the side was decidedly on Ukraine's side.
We remember Macron saying, we shouldn't humiliate.
Yeah. That was first half of 2022. Things change over the fall 2022, and by New Year's Eve address to the French public, December 2022, December 31st, he first said that he wanted to support Ukraine until the victory. He wanted Russia to lose, and so he sort of started to clarify things at this moment. And the year 2023, he made a lot of kind of big changes in the vocabulary, at least, that France was he started to push the idea that France should join NATO, that trying to also apologize for not listening to Eastern or Central European nations that had been kind of pointing at the Russian threat for years, and that France failed to listen. If I quote from memory, and was one of the first ones to talk about security guarantees. At the time, we talked security assurances to Ukraine at the G7 meeting in Tokyo in May, I think, 2023, and so on and so forth. Also, France proved to be much more of a supporter of Ukraine in terms of delivery of weaponry, and to the quality of the weaponry that it delivered. It did deliver armored vehicles, but also long-range surface-to-air missiles defense with the SAMT, the Mamba, the Scalp, cruise missiles, Storm Shadows, along with the Brits, rocket launchers, and so on and so forth. So it started to look slightly better on paper in terms of what France was doing to help Ukraine, but of course, and we've been tracking this along with the Kiel Institute at IFRI. And if you really looked at the figures, the map didn't really add up into what France was saying it was giving, because the quantities were very, very small. Many reasons for that. One of that is that France didn't have a lot of stockpiles because of other policy that we had during the 2000s, that we got rid of all old stuff. So a lot of countries, Central Eastern Europe, had like very, very old storage stockpiles that they could give to Ukraine immediately in large numbers. So that represented big quantities, and France had gotten rid of all this Cold War era stuff, unlike Germany, for instance, which still had, former DDR stockpiles that it could, provide to Ukraine in the first 2022, 2023. And finally, I forgot to say that French was very adamant at walking through the channels of the EU for Ukraine support. So anytime you had the Kiel Institute, as you mentioned, putting forward some bilateral aid, France was saying, hey, but, we're contributing to 18% of the
European support
budget, and the peace European Peace Facility, the EPF, which was instrumental in the help to Ukraine at least in the first 2 years of the war, before the Hungarians started to block it. France was very actually at the origin of the EPF, that initially wanted to be used for the Sahel and helping some African countries to fight terrorism. It turns out that it was very useful for Ukraine, but all this money was, going through EU channels, but it was like French contribution. But direct bilateral aid was not very, very, very present. It's still not there, and it actually decreased.
But would you say that because, France has this idea liking to present itself as a major European, even a world power, military power, does this, what we're seeing and what we have seen in Ukraine, does that actually undermine that image and narrative?
It does undermine, and every time the Kiel Ukraine tracker publishes its new ranking, it's kind of humiliating for France to be so low in the ranking. At some point, again, they were trying to fight off the methodology of this. And by the way, the methodology of tracking the money value of the military to Ukraine is difficult, because how do you assess the value of an aging armored personal carrier that some countries giving?
But do you think that it's been unfair to France, that the image, or is it or is it just the true?
I'm not here to judge. I just can tell you that the methodology of counting has been moving for everyone and every country. At some point, it was important for the countries to look good on this. Some of them, exaggerated the value for money that what they give. Some of them maybe even announced less than what was the actual value. But truth is that France, for all this, was always kind of behind, lagging behind, because it didn't have the stockpiles to give, and it never put a real fund that it could actually start to place order through. It had in 23 and 24. No, 23 and 24, a 200 million fund that was topped up, so 400 million on tops, that it could actually place order on for Ukraine. So it was never a lot. You're looking at Germany, which had an 8 billion fund that was kind of topped up every year, or Denmark that was around the 4 billions, or and now it's even worse than that. I mean, this current budget that is being passed right now at Parliament in France. I was just looking at the details in the military budget and looking for Ukraine line, and we have 31 million euros line for Ukraine in the military budget. Maybe 200 millions for bilateral aid, help, or aid altogether. This is less than Lithuania, in absolute
Yeah,
terms. I'm not talking in share of GDP. So this is very bad. Of course, France's finances are in a terrible situation. Anyway, we have a huge deficit that we're trying to
of course. Yeah.
fight against, but it's all a question of priorities in the end.
Saying, sorry, about the budget, 31 million for France. That
31
is
million on the
Yeah.
bilateral aid. So it doesn't include, of course, our contributions for EU processes.
Of course, but if I calculate quickly, that's about what Denmark gives every 2 days.
Yes, absolutely.
So how is it possible such a large country as France in such an important topic as the Ukraine war is just absent?
This is a shame. It's like it's unacceptable. I wrote about it, so I'm very, very open and honest to write about it. This is like nothing close to where we are. So when you say that to officials, of course they would try to spin this and say, "Oh, but by the way, France is doing so much in non-valuable actions," which is true up to a point. President Macron arranging the calls with Trump and Zelensky, and France leading the coalition of the willing with the UK, showing that it can possibly deploy troops to Ukraine at some point. All this is something that France can do and that Denmark can't, or other countries can, because we have this ability to do that. For a long time, I tend to say that France is the only country in Europe for which it is easier to send troops to Ukraine than to increase the spending for Ukraine. This is crazy, but this is our constitutions is done, because we have this army and this military which is pretty good and ready to fight. It can be sent off even without the parliament being notified before 3 days after being sent, and
But
not.
so getting to that point, do you think that is likely to happen?
This is a question. Right now, my view is that it was not as unlikely as anywhere else in Europe. President Macron definitely had a will to do something, and that goes back from February 2024, and having had some discussions with very high-ranking officials within the Ministry of Armed Forces, we're pretty close to send stuff and have people there, at least as trainers. We didn't want to do it totally alone, and to be totally fair, we had been a little bit alone in Europe to want to do this. Now in the political situation in France, it's not very likely that it happens. Also, all this was pending a ceasefire, and this ceasefire, despite everything we say about the Trump plan these days, for me is not ready to happen. If there is tomorrow a ceasefire in Ukraine, you may find some European troops, because the coalition of the willing exists and they have a concept of employment. I'm pretty sure that France will have a lion's share in the military assets that may be deployed. Some people actually use that as a kind of an excuse to say, hey, we can't give stuff to Ukraine because we need that for ourselves for when we deploy to Ukraine, which again can be something that I can accept if there is this perspective at some point. If this is just window dressing or an excuse, and actually we're not going to do anything anyway in Ukraine, then is just an excuse not to pay. So it's been an ongoing discussion. I think that France is, again, more likely than any other countries to do that. Will it do it anyway? It's still a pending question for me.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about Europe as well. We just mentioned the surprise by the Europeans when Donald Trump presented his 28th peace plan. Why is Europe not leading the response to war happening on European territory, but we're still outsourcing strategic decisions to Washington? And it's our future, actually.
Well, I think that because Europe, in a way, picked a side by supporting Ukraine, and that Russia is not interested in negotiating with Ukraine nor with Europe, that it considers both a lackey of the US superpower, and at the same time, I mean, you read Russian newspapers and stuff, they consider us as historical anti-Russian, so they don't want to discuss with us anymore. So because of that, Russia doesn't want to have this dialogue direct, and it's not for the lack of options. President Zelensky has offered President Putin for a long time that the two of them meet face to face. It didn't really happen. It sort of, and they had some the direct meetings in Istanbul at some point, but it didn't go anywhere. And because the United States has proved much more easygoing with the Russian demands, then they can come up with a plan which is strongly favorable to Russia. But even that, if you look at the way the 28-point plans that has been portrayed in Russian press, the Russians haven't been that interested in that anyway. So this is why I'm kind of skeptical that, of course, even a European revised version of those plans, which is slightly less favorable with Russia, even the first draft, it wasn't enough for Russia. So I feel that we're not getting this peace plan enforced anyway. The question is about who's going to be blamed for the failure of it, whether it's going to be Ukraine, Europeans, or Russia, as it should. But for me, this is why we've been sidelined in this track, is that we haven't been a full actor, of course, in the war itself, and we haven't been able to force Ukraine, in a way, to force Russia on the tables through actual pressure. The reason why Russia is going to the table with the Americans is that the Americans are just saying part of what Russia wants to hear. So they got, some interest. But
so you mean that the fact that the Europeans are being sidelined is because Europe is too strong? But there could be another. You could interpret it in a way that Europe is being sidelined because no one cares about Europe, and the big players in this is considered Russia and the US. But you don't see it that way.
They are, obviously, but it is Ukraine that is fighting, and it's Ukraine that is barring Russia from achieving its war goals since the first hours of February 24th. And one of the reasons why Ukraine can keep on standing firm today is mostly because Europe is still there. Of course, it's because of Ukrainian courage and Ukrainian resistance, which is internal, but also because Ukraine knows that Europe, or part of Europe, has its back so far. Some of it financially, and obviously Northern Europe and Central Europe have played a key part to that, and look at where the money comes from, and it's pretty clear. But also politically, and here I think that France did play a role, at least politically, to show the world that Ukraine could keep on, standing firm, because they know that they aren't alone. And for me, Europe has a place at the table in the shape of Ukraine. When Ukraine is at the table, this is Europe that is at the table, for me, because it's been pretty clear that the views between Zelensky and at least the leading European leaders on this coalition and stuff have been pretty much aligned. So when Ukraine can say no, it's Europe that says no. And, if Ukraine can say it, it's because Europe has its back. So my view is that Ukraine can speak for Europe in this story.
Do you think, to conclude, Eli, that Europe is already too late in scaling up support to Ukraine, or is there still time to reverse history and the future of our continent?
I think that Europe is too late. I think that Europe needs to anticipate a big change which is already happening in the way to support Ukraine. For a long time, 50% of the Ukraine military aid went through the U.S. Now, because the U.S. Basically zeroed down its aid to Ukraine money-wise, has been European money purchasing American weapons for Ukraine. Pearl, the priority Ukraine requirement list. And that is sort of okay for a while, but as you see the US losing patience over this thing, and threatening not to even sell those weaponry to Ukraine anymore, then we have to put get our act together so that Europe can keep on supporting Ukraine with the same amount of money, at least, if not more, but with European design and European produced weapons. To do that, we would still need money, and again, we would need this money to be more evenly shared among Europeans, and I think that France should carry its own share at the level where it should be. And it's not been the case right now, but also that the European producers, even if it's U.S. designed but European produced, we can discuss this. But should be able to kind of support this to the point where Russia does factor it in and realize that it's not getting anywhere, because Ukraine will remain there even if the U.S. sort of zeroed out on this, and that Europe is still going to be there. We still have money, we still have the will. Ukraine is still resisting, and at some point, if they want to have a real discussion, then we open to it. But let's have a real discussion, not some yielding to all Russian demands.
Okay, so you're relatively optimistic about the end of the war.
I try to be.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Eli Tenenbaum, for your very interesting insights. And you can find more on your work, as well as all the Vries reports on security and defense. Very interesting and readable on www.ifri.org/en, in English, of course.
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Thank you very much.
Merci. Thank you.
So just for transparency, this interview was recorded last week. And Stefan, just a couple of words now to debrief this interview. It was some interesting takeaways from Eli's.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. And you rarely hear French think tanks be so critical about France's role in this conflict, of course. We saw also that earlier this week, Volodymyr Zelensky was again in Paris. And of course, Europe doesn't want to be sidelined with the peace talks or peace peace talks, surrender talks maybe between the United States and Russia. And it also shows that I mean, France is not, of course, the only country that whose support is relatively weak. It also shows that the Europeans can still do more, even 4 years after the war started, almost 4 years. Very interesting talk.
Eli seeming to think that it's not a weak Europe, that, that the fact that Ukraine can stand up against Russia is showing that Europe is strong. What do you say about that?
Yes, of course, the Europeans have done a lot, but it's holding up, but it's just about holding up. It's not winning. So we should, it's easy to talk about this in a podcast and say, yeah, we should do this or should do that. But I think it could be possible that Europe does more and then help Ukraine win this conflict. But, that's a political choice. The Europeans seem to be more reunited these last couple of days since the US came up with their peace plan, their 28-point plan that took us completely by surprise. But there's still a long road ahead before there will be really a durable peace on the European continent, I'm afraid.
Yeah, some interesting things as well about how, this Rafale plan, many obstacles to actually get those fighter jets into the air. I mean, we're talking both, as Eli told us, the money issue, who's going to pay for them, the production issue, when will these actually be produced and how long it's going to take, and then thirdly, who is going to fly these jets?
Indeed.
Because that it sounds like maybe the smallest problem, but at the end of the day, that's what really counts. So not anytime soon is the feeling I got.
No, and also another thing is that the war in the air has completely changed. So actually, these fighter jets seem a bit outdated if you look at what's happening in the air right now with all the drones and the counter drones and the, we'll see what will happen. But we do recognize Macron's grand gesture, and I think it's also a way of using geopolitics to escape the mess in his own country. But we'll see. It was a very interesting talk indeed with Eli Tenenbaum.
And now, no So French episode show would ever be complete without an update on our prisoner-president or president-prisoner saga. Stefan, believe it or not.
Our favorite crook.
Nicolas Sarkozy has been and is in the news again.
It is incredible because only 500 hours, that's about the time former President Nicolas Sacré spent in prison. You will know exactly what happened in these 20 days because he is publishing Le Journal d'un Prisonnier, the Journal of a Prisoner. It will be out in bookstores next week on December the 10th. And that's the day of the Nobel Peace Prize. Just saying, there's no such thing as a missed opportunity in Sarkozy's world. Have you read it already?
No. I don't think anyone has. I have not had a private copy, at least. There are some, because of course in the promotion for this book, some of the quotes have been released. Nicolas Sarkozy says, in prison, there is nothing to see and nothing to do, which makes me very curious. What is he actually going to write these? Because it's 216 pages, according to the publisher.
That's 11 pages per day that he was in prison. 11 pages.
I don't know, Stefan, do you keep a journal?
Yes, sometimes, but it's, when
I spend how long do you write every
day? Maybe it's one paragraph about a day, and I don't even do it daily. So 11 pages per day. Imagine he sleeps 8 hours. That's about a page.
Especially
every hour.
With nothing happening. I'm very. I mean, in one sense, I'm curious because, of course, what do you write on more than 200 pages then on a couple of days and where nothing's happening? Apparently, he's also saying that there's sound is omnipresent. Silence does not exist at La Santé, which is the name of the prison. The noise is constant.
Well, that's probably
So
what a
maybe
lot of
that's what
people.
he's going to describe.
Yeah, about the noise. Yeah, and I think he feels like some kind of messiah that he was there, and now comes out and he spreads the word.
He
Uh,
did compare it to like how do you say it? A walk in the desert. Like a little bit of comparison. Jesus is he was tested in the wilderness, 40 days and 40 nights of fasting in the desert. So we'll see if we will make that comparison. But we do know that Jesus' biography was one of the books that he brought with him. So
yeah, and it is, of course, it takes the attention from the real topic, of course, that Sarkozy was imprisoned on very serious charges. He was found guilty of allowing his close collaborators, who were also convicted, to try to get funding from Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi at the time in 2007 for his presidential campaign. It's a very serious crime. He was convicted for it, and so he got out. But last week, the judge confirmed the sentence in another court case. He was there was the highest court. He was sentenced to a year conditional imprisonment. So there was another case. So this book is taking off, the
some
attention
of the
from, yeah,
limelight, yeah, exactly. Some of the lights from his more recent court cases, of course. But Nicolas Sarkozy, it's true in one sense that he has really transformed this into almost some kind of TV reality show. We remember how we could follow him before he went into prison, and now he came out of prison, what he's doing after. So he's really, just how do you say, he keeps the the grip on the storytelling
yeah,
of
yeah,
this
yeah.
in the most literal sense, I must say, as well, with this book coming
Yes,
out then
indeed.
next week.
Yeah, I find it rather shameless, but I'm afraid a lot of people will offer this book as a gift to their family members with Christmas. That's the whole idea, of course. It is out on 10 December next week.
Yes,
Maybe we
the
should read
French
it.
version. Yeah.
Yeah, we should read it for our listeners so they don't have to, and then we can give a short resume in 2 weeks in the next episode, and then we will also know what you can write about one day in 11 pages. It is, yeah, it's quite shocking, but Sarkozy never stops to amaze us.
Now, every winter, Stefan, along France's Atlantic coast, there is a tragic ritual that keeps repeating itself. Dead dolphins are washing up on the beaches in La Vendée, Charente-Maritime, in les Landes, so on the west coast of France. And for years, the researchers have tried to sort of track what is the reason for all these dolphins being killed and dying. And it turns out it's actually because of these accidental capturing in the fishing nets. So last year, it was decided that there was going to be a pause in fishing in certain areas along this coastline, and turns out that for once something actually worked.
Yeah, because some winters more than 1,000 dolphins were found on the beaches. And this week, it's actually good news. France Info highlighted something remarkable because a scientific study shows that a simple temporary winter shutdown of certain fishing zones has had a dramatic positive effect. That was the first time last year, so 24-25. The dolphin bycatch dropped by nearly 70%. In some zones, mortality was almost eliminated. So it is a very simple measure, which has a profound impact. So even short targeted closures during peak migration can prevent mass deaths. It is simple as that, actually.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, we all remember, I mean, I remember having lived here in France for a long time, all these pictures of dead dolphins. And I also remember some of the fears and some of the criticism last year when this measure was announced. And it's actually, but it's nice to hear that there are things that are possible to change with quite small, I mean, it wasn't like they suspended fishing like eternally. There was just a short suspension during a certain period that had this big impact, and that's it's quite, yeah, it's optimistic, and it gives hope that, you know, you with small and clever measures you can actually change the course of some things. So yeah, for me it's a really good and encouraging.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. The fishing industry, of course, is less happy. They don't want it to be too long, but then again, the proof is there, and of course, the dolphins are also very important for the whole balance in the ecosystem in the sea. So yeah, this can be an example for many winters ahead. It does not reverse yet a decade-long trend, but at least the signs are very hopeful. So maybe next summer, if we swim in the Atlantic coast, we can see dolphins again. That would be nice.
Definitely nice. Now, this wraps up this edition of So French. You can find all our episodes where you usually get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. And make sure that you don't miss any of our episodes by following us.
And you can also find us on Instagram. Just search for So French Show. And please share this episode with your friends and family. And if you have any remarks or questions, do shoot us an email. The address is bonjour, like hello in French, bonjour at sofrench.show.
And the So French podcast is presented and produced by me, Sara Bertilsson.
And by me, Stefan de Vries. And this podcast's original music is made by bleu.
We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. And until then, take care and
Au revoir.